Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Balie, where tonight we will be celebrating the European Literature Night, talking about transformation. My name is Veronica Baas. I'm a program editor here at the Balie.
And my name is Viola Karsten. I'm a program maker for the Goethe Institute.
Yes, and I already said we will be celebrating European literature, and we really have cause to celebrate because we are joined tonight here by some of Europe's most amazing authors.
Yes, so the authors we have here tonight with us are Julian Bucay from Romania, Małgorzata Lebda from Poland, Dimitri Kapitelman from Germany, Evelyn Mineur, the translator of Amanda Michalopoulou from Greece, who couldn't join us tonight, unfortunately, and Karolina Piegas from Estonia, as well as Artem Shapeyev from Ukraine. So nice you could join us.
Yes, and tonight's theme is transformation, and that might be the key theme in literature, and it's also a theme that is very much present in the work of the authors that we've invited here, but also in some of the essays that they wrote for the magazine Common Ground. And Common Ground is the annual magazine of the European Cultural Foundation, and you all find it on your chair, so you can read the essays afterwards, but we will also be discussing them tonight, and also there will be readings, there will be panel discussions, there will be interviews. We also have a 15-minute break, and I promise you to wrap up the evening before 10.
This is an annual event that we have been doing now for quite some time. It's a collaboration between the Balie and EUNIC Netherlands, the network for European cultural institutions and embassies.
Yes, so transformation. So before we invite the authors to the stage, Viola.
Yes, we also want to get to know our audience a bit. And we're wondering, who has ever felt transformed by a book? Maybe a raise of hands. Don't be shy.
Some people have been transformed, so that's a good thing, I guess.
Is there anyone brave enough who wants to share which book that was and why?
Well, in that case, I guess we will leave it to the professionals. We will come back to you later in the evening, so prepare yourself for some engagement. That would be great. Yes, but I would like to start the evening by inviting Julian Bucay to the stage, and I will introduce him to you. He's a Romanian writer, translator, and literary scholar whose debut novel, The Strange and Moving Life of Petra Barsacu, won multiple national and international awards. He studied and taught at the University of Bucharest, specializing in comparative literature, creative writing, and history. And in his work, he focuses on marginalized and overlooked lives and adds recognizable psychological depth. A word mouthful. We're very honored that he will read from the essay that he wrote especially for us, which was called Fast History, Slow Fiction. Can I have a warm applause?
Good evening, first of all. I'm glad to be here. I found it curious that they asked me to kickstart the night from this essay because in many ways it's probably the most pessimistic essay of all. And if anything, the night is off to a great sad start. It's called Fast History, Slow Fiction, as Veronica also mentioned. And I'll read just two short fragments from it, and hopefully it will generate less pessimistic conversations as the night moves forward. Ernest Gellner, a philosopher I admire, has a theory in one of his early books that philosophy, and I surmise great art, only come about when a historical transition happens. People look at new things, or look in new ways at old ones when everything starts going sideways and there's a crisis. This forces into existence new ways of thinking, born out of a somewhat desperate need to figure things out. So, in a sense, what happens is that when historical time runs smoothly, there is no opportunity to question how things stand, because they stand as they have always done. soundlessly, without breaking any molds. Nothing collapses, and there isn't anything to perplex the mind. Philosophy, Gellner thought, and literature, I argue, are produced by similar circumstances. Something baffling happens that has no obvious explanation, and society becomes aware of a fracture in the state of things, and people start looking for ways to mend it. So when the dictatorship happens, people imagine new frameworks for freedom, and when tragedy hits, they look for resilience in new artistic symbols, doctrines, and beliefs. But the pessimistic part of the essay is this, that history is always faster than our ability to sort of capture it in words. And that there is always some sort of lag between a biographical event and the stories we tell about it. And literature in particular is a type of art slower than most, especially in the long form of the novel. And stories lack the advantage of simultaneity to reality, in a sense, and they're always trudging behind the facts of life, like some form of belated witnesses. And that's it.
Much, and now we will start our first panel, and for that I would like to ask Małgorzata and Dimitri to join me here on the stage. Yes, I will sit for the introduction. Thank you. Małgorzata Lebda is a Polish poet, a novelist whose 8 poetry collections and debut novel Voracious have earned major awards. Her work is rooted in nature, memory, the body, and the land, and she is known for her lyrical and ecological voice. Dimitri Kapitelman is a Ukrainian-German writer and journalist whose work explores themes of migration, identity, and family history. Born in Kiev in 1986, he immigrated to Germany at a young age as a Jewish quota migrant. He is known for books such as Das Lächeln meines unsichtbaren Vaters and Eine Formalie in Kiev. His writing blends humor, vulnerability, and political insight. Thank you. And yes, so now we will explore a bit how writers work with the past, respond to the present, and imagine future, and how literature itself transforms as it moves through language, landscapes, and political realities. But I think before, maybe we want to start with how you listen to Julian's text, and maybe you have something to respond to, some thoughts.
I agree.
Well, we should go home then.
So, Julian, you describe literature as a tool for processing the past, but also to respond to the urgencies of the present. How do you, as a writer, navigate that tension?
Well, I think it's easier to navigate if you're a poet, for example, or if you do shorter art forms. Like if you're a lyrical poet and there's a revolution going on or a war, you sort of write a poem in an evening or something. I'm not saying it's easy, but it takes a shorter time. Whereas if you're a novelist like I am, it takes you about, what, a year or 2 maybe to shape something out that would explain the history. And if you want to write a novel about an event that is currently taking place, it will be over, the event, by the time you write the novel. And the weird thing about literature is that it is so retrospective in a way. Like the great novels I can think about in European literature, Thomas van Buddenbroek's, or the Radetzky March by Joseph Roth, are novels about empire, but they were written after the empires fell, in a sense. So you can't look at them and say, well, what these novels do is that they help me understand the present, because the present they talk about is already, in a sense, dead.
Mm. So is it then, in that sense, easier to talk about a history that's already...
It is easier when you're telling stories, because stories are generally about the past.
Mm.
I do feel that there is a tension in the fact that you're using stories about the past to understand the present. But I'm not really sure it always works. I mean, if you want to change something, your first instinct shouldn't be, well, I'm going to write a novel about it, you know?
Mm. Dimitri, when we started talking about transformations and the preparations for this event, You said something. You said transformation is constant change. The truth is trying out new costumes, never caring if it fits us well. I was wondering, what do you mean by that?
Well, good evening at first. I honestly was trying to be fancy. And I didn't expect to be checked up on it. But basically, it is also my way of saying, yes, history is moving faster than we are. And as you know, as flat as it sounds, the most constant thing is change. And one thing that I kind of, one remedy I found is to say, I'm also okay with being wrong as a writer. Maybe it's kind of even my task to sometimes be publicly wrong or have things in my novels that later on in the future I found to be problematic, but this also has a value. What I mean by that is, for instance, in my second novel, it's called A Formality in Kiev. There are figures who speak really in a negative manner of Ukraine, and they just carry this post-Sovietic bitterness, and this is not something I like to display, but it is important to actually show it, because it has been part of the reality, and it has transformed into a new reality now.
Oh, sorry.
So even though I don't like certain fragments of it, I still think it's important to have displayed it.
So you also so you think it's important in literature to have the freedom to correct yourself, to make mistakes, to try out new costumes. This is how I read, where I listen to you.
No, I just think you should be okay with, you can't outsmart history. You can't outsmart art even. You can't even outsmart yourself, as paradox as it may sound. And maybe this shouldn't be your approach, just, you know.
Małgorzata, do you feel that literature there's been a change in how literature engages with the past?
Okay, so I want to say that and maybe I will try to say something based my work, and this is quite interesting what you said about being poet and being a novelist, because why when someone is, you know, between these, and I have this kind of problem, and in my poetry I try to be very you know, accurate. I want to be more involved in the everyday experience, but when I see what I did in my novel, it's a work with history, with past, with my in this book, and I want to show you, because this is the quite new things. This book was published 2 days ago, and I am really happy. So thank you, yes. Copernic. and like a author, I am between, and and maybe it will be better to say something not like an author, but like a reader, because this is my, I am sure, the most important experience in my life, to be a reader. And if I should be honest, in that time, I have some kind of doubts about literature power, you know. So this panel and this opportunity to write this essay gives me chance to thought more about this, and like you said, I am in this moment that I can say, okay, maybe I am wrong, and this is great to be in that kind of moment, because 10 years ago I was too brave to, you know, I am the best. But now, because I read so many beautiful books, I know that no, that's not true.
Julian, do you also have doubt in the power of literature?
I do, but in a very general way, because practically I don't. let me try to explain that. I don't think the question that you started the night with was, does a book change you? And I don't think a book does change you, any book in a sense. I think what changes you is the fact that you always leave room for letting yourself be problematized by the books that you read, in a sense. So what changes you is the constant reading of books, the renewal of the fictional experience, the fact that you always place yourself in the mind of different characters. So the literary education in general changes you, but I'm not really sure one can find a book that could actually change your life, except if it fell on your head and killed you or something like that. So in that sense, I do have a very traditional, maybe, belief in the power of literature to actually ground humans in their day-to-day experience, to give them maybe the courage or the resilience to face certain difficult truths about their life. And in that sense, it changes you because it makes you stronger. But whether it changes history itself or whether it has any impetus to change the political situation, I really doubt it.
How do you listen to that, Dimitri? Do you think there's a power in literature for transformation?
Well, I think it strongly depends on the book, because there are novels which I read and I really enjoy them, but it almost feels selfish, because, you know, at that time I could be something productive, or I don't know, actually organize a real movement or whatever. But then there are other books where I felt like this left a seed in me, and I'm also I'm speaking as a reader, because for me as an author, every time I wrote a book, it changed me. Like I dived in at one point and came out at a totally different one. So, and if I am changed and start behaving differently, I might kind of change my surrounding too. And did transformation start? Maybe. And as a reader, sometimes I try to summarize and ask myself, of all those books you've been reading, what is it you actually can recall? I mean, precisely, what's the character's name? How does it start? What actually happens in the book? And often, if I'm honest, I kind of forgot about it, but I always remember the feeling I had reading it. And I feel like this is the seed that you take with you, like this small world. It might not cause you to, I don't know, donate 5,000 euros to a good purpose, but it might turn you into a more decent, reflective human being occasionally, maybe.
You were also mentioned that you both of you were mentioned the different roles as writing about on poetry and writing, being a novelist. You also write as a journalist. How is it for you how are these two different modes of writing affecting you, like when engaging with the transforming Europe? How do you,
Well, so the thing with working as a journalist, what I often realize is that people just get used to stuff. In the beginning, when we had articles, and I work for Die Zeit, which is actually the biggest weekly newspaper in Germany, and you had articles about the war in Ukraine, people were reading everything to bits. And 3 years into the war, it's really hard to keep people engaged because they just got used to it. And unless there's like something really spectacular happening, or unfortunately Putin himself is involved as a personal trigger, it's really hard to get people to read it. And also, this is actually a better example of how literature can change. So when I write about certain things as a journalist, there's a set of rules I have to obey. And for good reason. It's public service. And when I write about the same things in a book in literature, I have I am allowed to feel. I am allowed to be irrational sometimes. I have the right to be overly emotional. I have the right to hate, and I have the right to love. And it's really a big difference if you say, with this bombardment, 10,000 people died, or so and so many refugees sunk in the Mediterranean Sea, or if you're actually touched by one family who it happened to, or one life it happened to. And now that we talk about it, yesterday, so in my last novel, the Russian Specialities, there are also scenes where people in Ukraine are being bombed and hide in the shelter. And one of the people in the crowd at the reading yesterday in Den Haag told me, ever since I read their book, it feels different when I hear the news. I just now have a personal connection. And maybe in the best case, like this is the seed I was talking about. You don't need to recall all of the novel, but just recall the feeling that there's actually real people it's happening to.
Yeah. Małgorzata, there is also something else that is transforming very rapidly at the moment, and that's our ecology. And this is also a very central theme in your writing. I was wondering, how do these natural rhythms, the seasons, the decay, the regeneration, how does it influence your writing? Maybe you can elaborate on that a bit more.
Okay, so I should stress that I am from a village. I am from a deep village, which is really close to the border with Slovakia, and my childhood was totally, involved in this farm stuff, like animals, like I really recommend. I really recommend this book because this is the roots of this book is from my village, and I want to describe one situation when I was invited to Polish television, and the host of the program asked me and my friend, maybe you write about nature, about rivers, about climate crisis, because this is, so popular theme. And I answered, we wrote about this before it was so popular, and what I want to say that I can't write something different, like to not be connected with nature. Maybe this is my in some way superpower, but in the same time it's some kind of obstacle, because Małgorzata Lebda never will write about city, because this is not my environment, and like a reader again, this is something which I really like to diving. This is the space when I feel like this is my world. So.
It's the world you write from. But why do you see it as an obstacle?
Because in Poland I am the writer from village, and my main topic is Małgorzata Lebda is
Julia, I'm wondering, because you wrote the book The Strange and Moving Life of Prita Barazaku, where ecology also plays a very central role. It's also set in the countryside. Was that also how were you in that writing process? Were you also in maybe do you relate to what Małgorzata has been saying?
I do. There's a great genre in Romanian literature about village life, and I'm not doing anything special, and nobody thinks it's ecological in a way. Romanians are not very ecological in general. So what that means is that essentially Romanian culture has been rural for so long that village life has always been a big part of it. And I think it's mostly the case for all of Eastern Europe, not just Romania, for the Ukraine, for Greece, maybe for Bulgaria, for Serbia. In all of these literatures, you get that. The most emblematic characters, the most interesting ones in the sense, didn't grow up in the city, because people in Eastern Europe have hated cities for a moderately long amount of time. So I don't think of it as being in contact with nature, in a sense. It's not a philosophical. If you write about the village life in Eastern European literature, it's not an ecological thing. You do not want to prove a philosophical attachment to the cosmos of nature, As you get that in Western Romanticism in a way. You go write a poem about being in the woods, and that means something at a very mystical level, whereas in Eastern Europe you don't have that at all. It's just people in the village that you hate and want to write something about.
Thank you. Unfortunately, our time is already up, but we have more.
What a beautiful point to end with.
Yeah, what beautiful point to end with.
Well, we did say it's going to be pessimistic.
Yes. But yeah, so now we will be talking about translation, but I want to thank you for joining me. And Dimitri, we will see you back later, and where you will also talk more about your book that you already mentioned. So thank you. You stay, yeah. You stay.
Yes, so as an intermezzo, Viola mentioned it already. Unfortunately, due to unexpected circumstances, Amanda Michelapoulou couldn't make it, but we have found last-minute replacement, and we're very honored that her translator will represent her here tonight. So I will still introduce Amanda Michelapoulou. She's a Greek author of novels, stories, and essays, which have a worldwide audience. She won major Greek and international awards, and her work has been translated all over. She currently lives in Athens, and she teaches creative writing. And one of those translators here is Eveline Mineur, a heritage specialist and a translator living between Greece and the Netherlands. She's still working on the translation, right? So we do have a unique point of view.
Yes, it will be a first taste.
A first taste, but she will first start by reading the essay that Amanda wrote especially for this evening.
Thank you, Viola, and of course, thank you for having me, and in that way also giving a voice to the translators who are also making accessible the great work of the authors that we have with us today. First, I would like to, of course, send give Amanda's regards to you all. Unfortunately, she had an emergency at home, and sometimes you are needed at home. So I'm glad to step in, so her voice will still be heard. We'll start with her essay, which is also present in the publication that you received. A Princess on the Flood, by Amanda Michalopoulou. When I think about Europe nowadays, I can't help but feel like I am back at school in an Athenian class overlooking a courtyard with pigeons. It's the 80s, and I'm writing an essay on Europe. Back then, we still thought of Europe as a Phoenician princess, perhaps the first refugee in European mythology, riding a white bull. That bull was Zeus, who changed into an irresistible animal to kidnap her and carry her to Crete to rape her. 30 years ago, we didn't discuss the aestheticization of patriarchal violence in the works of the Renaissance. It's a pity, because a feminist reading of Titian or Rubens might have anticipated our European future. We used to approach Europe in both romantic and financial terms, back in Greece, like in the old fairy tales where, after some extremely difficult ordeals, the couple reunites and lives happily and lavishly ever after. In civil rights class, we later explored free movement of people and ideas more pragmatically. Still, freedom proved to be another fairy tale, the rhetoric version of a difficult unification. When asked those old questions about Europe in 2026, I feel both old and embarrassed. As old and embarrassed as Europe might feel, a tired princess who drags and drags the bull through the courts while justice is still not being served. Allow me to change the suffocating narrative and use the plot of a recent short novel of mine instead. In her Metamorphosis, published in 2022, we follow Sasha, a young girl who discovered that she had been transformed into a man overnight. It was a coming-of-age story in an unnamed but probably European city where it perpetually rains. A retelling, obviously, of the well-known Kafka's Metamorphosis, in which Gregor Samsa changed into a giant insect, an iconic European novella about identity and social expectations. Needless to say that in 2022, what we called identity in society needed a lot of rethinking and reworking. After the pandemic, various dogmas of control, together with an almost existential feeling of choicelessness, changed Europe and the world. Supported by a deeply troubled America, a new Puritanism combined with opportunism claimed that freedom was reactionary. It was, and still is, the kind of dystopia we read about in novels. Every totalitarian system is rooted in simplistic language and flawed dichotomies. If we revisit now the Sprachkrise of the German-speaking world before the First World War and right after 1945, when German and Austrian writers realized that their words had been stolen by the Nazis, we find many similarities with our strange times. Words like homeland, brother, borders, woman, exile, reproduction, evil, nation have been stolen again by creepy governments and narcissistic individuals. Writers today don't just write books, they fight to get words and their meaning back. Sasha describes in the book her university teacher, a person of uncontrollable power. I can't decide if he's, this is a quote from the book, I can't decide if he's shameless or a coward, she says. Maybe a shameless coward. When the university was hit with cutbacks, he managed to push out the 2 female professors in the department, saving his skin through all kinds of treachery. He thinks he knows everything because he was born a few decades earlier. But why can't we propose something new? Why is what people already know better than what they haven't yet learned? End quote. In her metamorphosis, instead of a pandemic, there was an unprecedented flood, a huge wave which changed the shape of the earth. Europe broke into islands of various sizes. Telecommunication companies, automobile manufacturers, electric companies all went bankrupt. Owners of top-floor apartments and steamboats got rich overnight. So too did plumbers, explosive experts, and companies producing rain boots. In this post-Eden, newspapers and museums are things of the past, as are airplanes and telephones. At second-hand shops, students exchange a volume of poetry for a belt or a pair of shoes. The transformation of the landscape, open-air hydroponic farming, hot springs, all sorts of generators, echoes the transformation of the self. In this inescapable capitalist burnout, diverse objects are dragged up from the mud, whose worth is no longer to be found in their exchange value, but rather emerges organically from their very existence, their shape, their strange beauty. This works hopefully as a metaphor for the value of art. When we write books, we don't always know the purpose of allegories. They are strangely protected by the unconscious movement of characters and plots. But when we gain some distance from the book we wrote, the reality of the text gets self-organized and somehow self-imposed. Although it is not the job of a writer to overinterpret their own book, it feels sometimes tempting. In this context, let's rethink the question of Sasha. Was the situation to blame, or the people who took advantage of it? To return to caveman days, it takes more than caves. It takes minds full of unbreakable stalactites. It is an urgent question, and we'd better not wait for global warming to melt all stalactites to answer it. Now, what strikes me in Amanda's contribution is the idea of perhaps unwanted, inconvenient things washing up on the flood of climate change and capitalism, but also of that same rising water working as a mirror, reflecting an, again, perhaps unwanted, inconvenient image of ourselves. Now, to tie that idea to Amanda's book that I'm currently translating, which is called Why I Killed My Best Friend, I will read a very short extract from the book, first in Greek, then in the English translation of Karen Emmerich, and lastly in my own translation, which will flood the Dutch market early next year. Could I please have a glass of water? Thank you. So here's Greek. Το πρόσωπο του Αλβανού σχηματίζεται φευγαλέα στο πιάτο μου, στη σούπα λαχανικών που έχω παραγγείλει. Τα σκληρά του ζυγωματικά λιώνουν ανάμεσα στα καρότα. Ο ζωμός έχει τη μεταλλική γεύση του αίματος, σπηλιά, μετρό, φυλακή, κάτι υπόγειο, σκοτεινό, βαθύ. Οι κροτάφοι μου μουδιάζουν, ξεραίνεται η γλώσσα μου. The face of the Albanian shapes itself for an instant in the bowl of soup before me. His harsh cheekbones flicker in and out of visibility between floating carrots. The broth has the metallic taste of blood, cave, metro, prison, a place that's underground, dark, deep. My temples grow numb, my tongue is dry. Op mijn bord zie ik in een flits het gezicht van de Albanees in de groentesoep die ik heb besteld. Zijn grove jukbeenderen versmelten met de stukken wortel. De bouillon heeft de metalige smaak van bloed, grot, metro, gevangenis, iets ondergronds, duisters, dieps. Mijn slapen tintelen. Ik krijg een droge mond. Dus ik laat het daarbij. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelien. Yeah, so just can you characterize the work of Amanda for us? Like, what kind of writer is she?
Yes, I would love to. Let me first start by saying that the work of Amanda, the novel that will be published early next year, will be the first contemporary Greek woman author in maybe 20, 30 years published in the Netherlands. So I'm really, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And now I'll characterize her work.
Well,
because she's very well known in Greece. She's a very prolific writer, actually. She's also one of the authors that's touring Europe and the world, visiting literary
translated in more than 20 languages. So
exactly.
We're late to the party.
It was about time. Her work itself, of course, it evolved over the years. She started publishing in the 90s, and she's still producing, nice, good books every 2-3 years. So her voice, of course, evolved. I would say that the book that I'm translating is a book she wrote when she was in her 20s, and it was published early 2000s. So there I really hear the voice of an author, of maybe your a friend in college, or I can really relate to the voice of the author. In her later work, of course, she gained many more layers also through gaining experience in life, and I would say that her style is clear. She has a clear voice, but also with elements of surrealism now and then, and topics are ranging from recognizably personal elements, always with a backdrop of political engagement as well. And she has a strong feminist approach.
Yeah, and just lastly, like the question that we've been repeating tonight, like how does translating her and being so intimate with a text change you?
I would say that as a translator, of course, you first read, you first read very well, and you try to understand the voice of the author. So how it changes you? Well, in my case, I spent about a year with this book. So it's a project that you spend a year with someone else's thoughts, words, stylistic decisions. Of course, that influences me. Now, it's also the first book I'm translating, so I'm curious to see how that will evolve when I start to get to work with other voices as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We will continue the conversation on what it means to translate and transform. But thank you so much for representing Amanda. Evelien, go on.
Yes, thank you, Evelien. It's very great to also raise awareness for translators and who make books also accessible to other countries. But you're not the only translator here tonight. We realized that actually many of our authors here have also worked as a translator or still do. So now with this, I want to welcome Artem and Carolina to the stage. And Carolina Piegas is an Estonian writer, translator, and editor whose 6 poetry collections include the award-winning The Light Within the Stone. She's editor-in-chief of the literary journal Veska Rork, I probably mispronounced it. And her own work has been translated into 15 languages. She also writes fiction, including the novel The Cut Line. Artem Shapey is a Ukrainian writer, translator, and a reporter whose works have been shortlisted for 4 times for the BBC Ukraine Book of the Year award. A longtime advocate of nonviolent political change, he took up arms after Russia's invasion and now serves as a soldier while continuing to write. His work mainly explores personal and societal transformation in times of conflict. Thank you for joining me. We will soon be hearing an essay by Małgorzata, which is also in the Common Ground magazine, and where she talks a lot about translation as well. But before that, I quickly want to do a round of the languages you have been translating from and in. Maybe Artem, you want to start?
Goedenavond, beste mensen. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, and of course, дорогі українці, вітаю тих, хто сюди прийшов. I have been good at faking knowing languages up to the point that Małgorzata thought I knew Polish because my accent was okay. But actually, I only translated professionally to and from English. And I would also like to add on the previous question, because I was the one who was willing to tell about how a book can change your life. For me,
yes.
The first book of that sort was Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, up to the point that when I grew up, I didn't remember why, but I wanted to go away from my home, same as José Arcadio Buendia, the son. I didn't remember that he did it because he got a woman pregnant, but I did want to come back very big and strong attitude. And so when I was 23 years old, I did go to Latin America. Being a Ukrainian, I wasn't able to travel all the way to Colombia, but I came back kind of big in attitude. And by the way, as I was telling to my editor, I was sometimes mistaken for a Dutch person in Latin America because I have a tattoo which looks like a very Dutch windmill. And
Okay. Yeah.
But as for translating, I would now rather talk about being translated. I mean, yes, I did translate Mahatma Gandhi, and I was influenced to the point that I considered myself a staunch pacifist up to the day that Russia invaded my country, like on a full scale. That's about that. As to being translated, I have been so far translated into several languages, including Dutch. And I realized that translators are actually co-authors. In the translation of my of my novel *The Weathering* into English, I quoted Daisy Gibbons as a translator, and I was so happy that they put her name right on the cover of the book, because I believe this is very important. And I also wanted to thank Tobias Bals, who translated my latest book, Ordinary People Don't Carry Machine Guns, into Dutch. And from what I gather, it's a very good translation. It has been really praised on. And on a previous event in Rotterdam, the moderator tried reading a joke which he translated, which sounds very different from the way it is in Ukrainian, but it worked. So thank you, Tobias. And they should have put you on the...
And
I believe they should have put you on the cover also as a co-writer.
Thank you. I think many of these things you mentioned, we will also talk about that in a bit. Carolina, what about you?
So I've been translating a lot myself as well, and I think when I was a kid, I wanted to become a translator. Actually, I didn't dare to dream about becoming a writer. But I loved languages and I loved books. But I've been translating mostly poetry because I'm first and foremost a poet who's been also writing novels recently, I've translated from Scandinavian languages, from Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. And in Norwegian, they have a really nice word for translating poetry. It's like gjendiktning. So it means to create another poem. So that's
beautiful.
Resonates, but there's a separate word for that. So I really love that, because translating poetry is pretty much creating a new poem as well. I've translated also from English, from Spanish, a little bit from Greek, although I'm not very good at it.
Wow. Thank you. And you, Małgorzata?
So I have the same route like you. I am from poetry, and if I add poetry and novel, it will be around 20 language. So it's really. I am really happy because it's something amazing to work in another languages. This is, multiplicates your voice like something amazing.
Yeah. And you, Julian?
I've done translation professionally for about 15 years, because in Romania you make more money out of translating other people's books than writing your own. And I've mostly translated from German, English, and French, which are my mainstays. Lately, I've done a lot of German books. For a while, I think for about more than a while, for about a decade, I've probably translated tens of children's books and bored my mind out of it. And I'm kind of bored with it, to be honest. I never wanted to do it. I started it because I needed the money and because you can't actually make money out of writing fiction. And then it went out for about a decade and a half, and I'm still doing it.
So there's the more pessimistic note again, but but yeah, I would like to give the floor to Małgorzata. You wrote an essay for Common Ground, where you also reflect on this part of transformation of literature, on translation. Your text is called Transformation, Movement Towards the New. Thank you.
Okay, I want to say something about previous speech. I'm really grateful for your voice about your author, and we saw how translator can be the best ambassador of their author. It was really beautiful. Thank you. Czuję się już pisarką europejską, którą można poznać tu, poza Polską, tylko dzięki temu, że ktoś zdecydował się poświęcić miesiące swojego życia na to, żeby zaprosić moją napisaną po polsku opowieść do innych rejestrów, innego języka, innego ducha danego kraju. Istnieje tu dlatego, że jestem tłumaczona. Żyć w wielu językach, że sparafrazuję przysłowie dotyczące czytania książek, to żyć wiele pisarskich żyć jednocześnie. Tłumaczenie, przekład, jak je rozumiem i czuję, to jednocześnie przenoszenie z jednego języka do drugiego, ale w tym mieści się też pewien rodzaj, jak sądzę, transformacji. To ruch do nowego dzieła, teraz wzbogaconego o głos tłumacza, tłumaczki, a więc też, jak wiem, jednego z najuważniejszych czytelników na świecie. To daje mi pewność, że sytuacja, kiedy tracimy coś w tłumaczeniu, jest rzadsza niż, jakby to ujął Stanisław Barańczak, ocalamy coś w tłumaczeniu. Za to ocalenie, za gościnność, której doświadczam w gestach tłumaczy i tłumaczek, dziękuję. I jeszcze słowo w sprawie gościnności, która niekiedy jest bardzo dosłowna. Relacja pomiędzy osobą autorską a osobą tłumacką to każdorazowo przygoda, wielokrotnie przeradzająca się w bliską znajomość, czy też po prostu w przyjaźń. O jednej z nich napisałam w wierszu z tomu Mer de Glace i pojawia się w nim serbska tłumaczka Biserka Rajcic, która ponad 20 lat temu odważyła się tłumaczyć nikomu nieznaną jeszcze wtedy nawet w Polsce poetkę z małej wsi z Beskidu Sądeckiego. Znaczyło to dla mnie wiele i dalej znaczy. Biserka nie dość, że ugościła mnie w języku serbskim, to jeszcze wielokrotnie gościła mnie w swoim domu, przez który na przestrzeni kilkudziesięciu lat przewinęli się polscy poeci i pisarki. A wiersz idzie tak. Sawa, Dunaj. List od tłumaczki z dalekiej Serbii o śmierci, tej, która wysyła przed sobą lisa, chorobę, ale przede wszystkim idzie w nim o życie, o uparte przekładanie go na ten szorstki język Przybosia i ogrom Witkacego, ogrom Gombrowicza. Kilka lat temu, wiosną, na bazarze przy ulicy Pozeska, nieopodal mieszkania Biserki, kupowałyśmy od kobiety o skórze przypominającej pomięty pergamin, a muszę dodać, że niosła ze sobą zapach mleka, kostkę sera, rabarbar, białe jaja. Pomyśleć tylko, wtedy, w tamtym czasie, wody Sawy i Dunaju leniwie łączyły się, niepopędzane żadną z burz. Uparta praca tłumaczy i tłumaczek, uparte przekładanie nas na szorstkie języki, transformacja, zmiana, ewolucja, ruch ku nowemu czytelnikowi, oto szczęście istnieć w językach.
Thank you so much. Maybe before I have a question, maybe you have a question or comment. Do you recognize, maybe, yeah, you had to turn around a bit to read the translation, but do you recognize some of the thoughts of Małgorzata?
I think I already mentioned it, that very often like being translated means being reinvented. And so, yeah, one has to be really grateful because I wrote a similar thing about like Daisy Gibbons' translation of my novel into English, that basically what bothers me a lot, and I think this is something that may even resonate that probably will resonate with the Dutch audience and with most of us, that most of the so-called world literature is the literature of ex or existing empires, like in English, in Russian, in French. And for all of us, we only exist because of translators, because these are ones that are already like born translated for historical reasons. And for example, unfortunately, I didn't know a lot about Tommy Wieringa because it has to be a translator from Dutch to Ukrainian, from one rather like small language in terms of population to another small language. And that's why like I am now reading him in English. So there still has to be a mediator. But I believe that especially now with more and more educated people, it is the translators who can make literature from any part of the world a global literature. Because literatures are not divided into small literatures and great literatures. They're just divided by the amount of translators, basically. Yeah? So there's a lot of many more translators, like from Russian than from Ukrainian, and that's why you all know the Russian literature better. And unfortunately, it goes all the way around. Like we all know probably American literature better than the Dutch literature. This is sad, but this can be mended by translators who can make any book a part of the global literature.
I see you nodding.
I just also wanted to maybe expand the idea that, for example, for us in Estonia, we consider that very big part of a culture rests on translations. So there's 1 million people living in Estonia, speaking Estonian, and of course we're very proud and happy about our own writers and cultures, but we need to have all the ideas and all the books and from abroad as well. So a lot of what we do is based on translations, and then again, some few single translators can have a very, very big influence than also the other way around. So I think there's only one translator into Dutch, for example.
Yeah.
And also, for example, there's one translator from Polish into Estonian who kind of decides which Polish literature we read, and that's also a very big power of translators. But definitely translators are ambassadors, and there's a great power in it.
Małgorzata, I find it really nice how you talk about that something is being added. You call it a sort of salvation, I think, in the English translation. What is it that it becomes that is being added that it's maybe not in its original form? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
So I wrote this because of my experience with work with translators, and what I want to say that, like someone here said, the book which I have in another language, this is not my book. This is not only my book. Now it's my and Charlotte book. Thank you, Charlotte, for translation. In one essay, I read something about the negotiation between writer and translators, and this is something very, important for the final version of the book. But what I want to say, for me, like a writer, I want to say that this experience changed my thinking about how I work, and this is, like I said, translators are the best readers, and sometimes the question that translators can create are, really deep, and even and even this is the something which changed me, like the writer. So I want to say that this is still the process of negotiation, and because of that, I feel that I not stay in one point like an author, but I am in a process. This is something like, maybe I can compare like organic process. So this is beautiful for me.
Maybe that's something that I really like how Borges said that we sometimes talk about things lost in translation, but actually translation gains. So maybe that's also something that we gain because the books that the book is written by the words of your translator. It's translator's words, right? But also all the extra layers that kind of open up. So that's another book.
Unfortunately, we are slowly running out of time, but Julian, even though you seem to be quite negative about your work as a translator.
No, about my own.
Your own, but
Yes.
has it also changed, or like being a translator, has it also influenced or informed your work as a writer?
It does. So in a serious tone now, I do think that translators are vital. Whatever shape or function European literature is going to play or have, it will be impossible to do anything without having people to mediate between literatures, without having them do day-to-day work on translating even the most horrible of European books. Because what they don't say about professional translating is that you don't really like
It's so dark.
all of the books. You don't really like all of the books that you translate.
I wanted to talk
in a
about
career.
the responsibility of translators. I once tried to read a Soviet translation of Norman Mailer, The Naked and the Dead. The Naked and the Dead. And the Russian translator, the Soviet translator, as you know, in Soviet there was a lot of censorship. And it was stated clearly that we have excluded some scenes that we think are unworthy of his talent. And I'm like, oh, I'm not reading Soviet translations ever again.
Yeah.
The question was?
The question was, but to keep it short, because I think we need to start our break very soon. How has being a translator also informed or changed
it makes you a better writer, I think. And what you do, if you translate for a long time, it sort of becomes instinctive. The finding of phrases, the way you work with words, the never-ending problematizing of language. And if you do that for years and years and years, it does shape your writing in ways that you can't possibly calculate any longer, especially when you translate from very difficult languages, or when you try to find a perfect or a moderately perfect transcription of some very, very difficult thoughts. And that shapes you in a very, very meaningful way as a writer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will now have a 15-minute break. And so be here at 9 sharp. And we're looking forward to seeing you after. And yes, thank you so much for joining me on stage. And
Yes. Thank you all very much. I'm happy. I think everyone returned, and that is a very smart choice because we will continue this conversation with Artem Chapeya. Thank you so much for returning back to the stage with us.
Bedankt.
Bedankt. Yes, thank you. So he was a translator, we talked about it, a journalist, a writer. But then in 2022, he changed from a civilian into a serviceman, from a writer into a soldier. And all of this happened, of course, in a country that was also fundamentally changed by the war. And we are talking about transformations tonight, and I think this might be the most fundamental change maybe that a person can go through. And I find it so very impressive that that somehow hasn't completely killed off your ability to find words for that. So that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. Because I think in the book, Gewone mensen dragen geen machinegeweren, like we mentioned in Dutch, you really investigate those transformations inside yourself and also the resistance I think you have to those changes and how you also don't want to completely change. So that's why I want to, we are all very happy to have you here, and I want to delve into that. So I wanted to ask you, like, when and how did you become aware that you wanted to register those changes in yourself that were happening when so much else was also changing around you?
Thank you. Well, first of all, when we talk about a country changed by war, we have to mention who started the war. Because sometimes when I hear like Ukraine war, this triggers a lot of anger in me. It was Russian, I would say imperialist attack on Ukraine. It's not just a war. And as I mentioned before, I was influenced by the things I was translating, and a few years before, I translated Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha in South Africa about his methods of purely non-violent resistance, like petitions, letters, hunger strikes, and organizing marches. And I really respected that, and I really do respect that. The reason why I translated this was because Ukraine was really, including myself, traumatized by violent protests that were happening in Ukraine. We did oust our authoritarian government, but more than 100 people died in the process, and it was an enclosed trauma until it was covered by another trauma, much bigger one. And I think as soon as I woke up, well, not that soon, we were talking about words, finding words. And I mentioned in the book that in the beginning it was really hard. And I felt this, I remember this stupid thought that we are running away with my kids. And what I'm thinking about, among other things, is that I am a writer and I cannot find the words for what is happening. It does take time. I then later read some books that this happens at times of trauma, when you feel dissociation and you feel like there will be no life after. The decision came within the first day. And I think about 1/3 of the book is about that decision. And
to join the army.
The decision to join the resistance. I must say that I was far from there were far from few people who did that. In the first months, there were like huge lines of people willing to join the resistance. And what I admired most was people coming from abroad, Ukrainians and also some foreigners. Like, for example, I met Polish people, I met people from Germany, I made friends with a person who died later, who was an Oxford graduate from the United Kingdom, and I admire those people because I thought that I would not probably have the guts to do that. But since I was woken up by bombs in Kiev, for me it felt like the choice was about what I want to become. Basically like a passive victim, a runner, or a resistant agent. For me it was about agency largely. And coming back to Gandhi, I still respect it a lot, but it was obvious within the first day that no matter how many hunger strikes you go on, you will not stop the bombs and you will not stop the columns of tanks. And I mentioned in the book one of the story, and that's, by the way, coming back to how books change you, because obviously to become a writer, one becomes a reader first, and an avid reader at that. And I remember that when deciding what I would do, I had a lot of thoughts about one episode in Orwell in 1984. How, maybe you remember when Winston Smith was forced to betray Julia in his thoughts, and Julia betrayed Winston Smith during torture. They felt that, to quote more or less, that something in your heart, something in your breast is burnt out, cauterized forever. And I was afraid that if I, as I felt, betray myself, first of all, something in my heart would be cauterized, burned out forever. It would never heal. And the feeling was that it's better to it's better to risk losing physical life than risk losing oneself forever. And
So
I was optimistically, I'm an optimist, so I was optimistically counting. For me, the reference to what happened was when Soviet Union attacked Finland, and it lasted for 3 months, so I imagined it will also last for months, and I counted that no matter whether we lose or win, at least we would have tried, and I counted optimistically that the chance of dying is much lower than 10%, because you cannot kill everybody so fast. So I'm an optimist, and you must understand that most people don't go to war to get killed, and
No.
especially if you volunteer. You go to war to try and not get murdered inside.
Yeah, so there would be a profound change anyway. But you chose which
I
change?
quote a lot I was influenced by the French public intellectuals. I'm educated in philosophy, and there's this thing that Sartre mentions in Resistance. You in the Netherlands also had your Resistance, and actually my publisher has started from the Resistance movement, and I quoted. That's again about how books change you. Like philosophy books. So there was the same choice in, for example, the French and I believe also the Dutch resistance, what you will do. Will you hide? Will you stay with your parents who need you so much? Or will you join the resistance? And what you choose is what you become. So it's not just a very fundamental choice like that defines what you become in the future. And so I thought a lot about it, whether I want to become a refugee or a runner or a victim for the rest of my life, or whether I risk something, and I was optimistic that I don't risk too much, and I feel like an agent in my own life, at the very least.
Yeah. No, what I find so beautiful in your book is that in one way this is very clear that this choice defines you, and you have that ability to really make that existential choice of who you want to be. But at the same time, you are also constantly questioning what that is then meaning for you and to be you, and how that changes you. And I want to quote you here. What transpires inside a person who has never even thought about picking up a weapon, who for years planned to run away and hide, and now faces a different kind of challenge from any they could have imagined in advance. Why and how do they change their view? What is it that takes place in their head? I've been reflecting on this for over 2 years now, my 2 years plus years in the army. I untwist, uncoil, untangle the skein, but I still don't understand it, though it would seem that peering inside your own head would suffice to know your own thoughts. And because we are talking about transformation, I really, it's moved me how you changed from like the third person perspective to yourself, like you're constantly trying to observe what this is doing to you, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's still difficult, and sometimes you need somebody to help you, like a psychotherapist, for example. But it's weird remembering, and I mentioned this in my book, that up until the day when Putin did attack, or Russia did attack, we knew that this could happen. And I mentioned how once I was drunk with my best friend at the time, and we were really discussing which way to run with our families, and we decided on Romania beforehand, because we thought that the Romanian border is less guarded, the least guarded among European borders, European Union borders. And also, no offense, we thought that the Romanian border guards can be bribed. So that was a plan. That was a plan. We knew the route. But then, like, by the time I came to the border, I changed completely. And there were some episodes which I mentioned in the book where when a traumatic event happens, you sometimes feel as if everything is happening like in black and white, as if you cannot hear well, like you're dissociating basically in psychiatric terms. And then the first strong feeling that pierced through that blanket of dissociation was a shame for another person, because I saw how another person was like trembling, and worse than that, to quote 1984 again, there was a son who was basically like, don't do it to me, do it to Julia. In his case, he's like, don't do it to me, my father is going to war. And I was thinking about my father, who is over 60, and like I was looking at this person and I pitied him. Like, I understood that I don't judge him, but I don't want to become something similar, because I felt that it would be difficult for me to live on. But at the same time, it's not a simple decision, it's not a heroic decision, because you realize that you want to do that, but with the least risk possible, yeah? And I was very happy, like, just not to pretend that I'm some sort of a, I don't know, The Rock or something, that I was very happy that because of my higher education in law, which I didn't finish, they ascribed me to military police and not the stormtrooper brigade. And I was like, whew. So I did the right thing, and I was lucky, because the decision was made, so that you understand. It's like the first weeks of the war, I was there on the third day. That's how long it took me to travel through the country to my hometown, where I was registered, including as a potential then soldier. So this is how it happens. There's like a huge line, like a really huge line, and it's similar. Maybe you've passed an immigration to some other country, and it's like, okay, why are you here? And no, you don't pass. Like you go. Like that's like in America. I was I was like in a New York airport, and it's like, no, you're too black. You don't pass. But there it was. Have you surfed? No, you don't pass. Like other people don't. And with me, like, have you surfed? And I'm like, well, when I was 17, 18 years old, I was a cadet, which is quit because it was like we had an authoritarian government at the time. I didn't want to serve that. And he's like, okay, you pass. And like, whew, so I passed. And then when they decide where you go to, it's also, they look into your like documents. And, oh, higher education, okay, military police. Oh, lower education, stormtrooper. That's...
Yeah, it's one of the themes in the book as well.
Yeah, it's
really.
like it happened
like social structure.
And I felt like I won the lottery, and basically that's what happened. And I realized how privileged I was, how lucky I was to still be alive now. And on the other hand, something that I talk a lot in the book, this is still a dilemma, because you still feel that sort of a guilt that somebody is doing more than you.
There's
that
always-
obviously always like, if I'm not in the army, I should volunteer. But I volunteer, but I put I know my effort, but not my life. If I am in the army, I'm still like in the military police, not in the infantry. And then I met a guy, good friend of mine from college, who also went, and he's like, yeah, I'm in the infantry, but I'm an officer, and I just basically. Well, he said, like, I'm parasitical on the soldiers because I was assigned to be their psychologist, so, you know, and stuff, and this goes on, and up until something that is not yet in the book, like when your friend dies, and you're like, okay, he died because he was slower than me, why was I faster than him? And this goes on and on. But this is also trauma. I think that it's not very rational, but I try to describe the way it is. And the other thing is, like, yes, you're living for the army, and you're like this allegedly hero, but you're leaving your wife with your kids as a typical macho. Like, you always thought of yourself as, oh, I'm this European son of the world, I don't belong to any country, and I belong to the generally like European middle class culture, and we are so like Swedes, we will be like, we'll share the care of the kids
Equally.
exactly in parts, as we imagine Swedes, okay. But then this comes, and you're basically, well, in Ukrainian we say it, you put somebody before the fact. So it's something that's so deep that I understood that if I ask what do you think? Of course my wife would say, no, don't go. Of course my mom would say, well, don't go. And I would, okay, they didn't let me. And that's what many men did. And yeah, they didn't let me. But in my case, this is also not a very good scenario. It's like, Mom, Oksana, I'm going to the army, sorry. Yeah, and well, Oksana said she knew it before I knew it. So
She knows you well.
Afterwards,
Yes.
yeah, but I didn't know it. As I was mentioning, I was planning to escape to Romania.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you, yes. Would you be so kind to read some fragment from the book?
Yes, we agreed that I am reading. There's different types of translation, and it's like in the movie, this will be with subtitles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, don't combine the mics, because then there will be interference.
You're right.
Yes, great.
А недавно я випадково побачив на відео з передової Федю, свого знайомого з юності. Він був колись викладачем філософії в університеті. Потім вирішив, що справжній мислитель має бути з народом. Звільнився з кафедри, вивчився на робітничу спеціальність і пішов працювати на баштовий кран. Такий самий філософ-практик, як Григорій Сковорода, що пішов із царських придворних у сільські мандрівники у XVIII столітті. Тільки Федір у 21 столітті закономірно більш урбаністичний. А зараз він польовий розвідник у сумнозвісному, практично знищеному росіянами місті Бахмут. Бахмут виглядає так, ніби його перемішали ложкою. Шматки будинків, згорілої техніки, стовпів, дерев. Напевно, і люди десь у цьому місцеві є. Воронки, в які транспорт провалюється. І на фоні цього всього цвітуть вишні. Біжиш зранку по Бахмуту з групою. Все в руїнах. Покрито чи то ранковим туманом, чи то пороховими газами, чи димом пожеж. Усюди уламки снарядів, техніки, поламані дерева. А на вцілілих гілках, ніби нічого не відбувається, цвіт вишні. І таке враження, що ти потрапив у дурнуватий сон, де все відбувається не так, як має бути. Ці бахмутські вишні я запам'ятаю надовго. Багато людей, які самі не в армії, передусім я зараз думаю про жінок, у тому числі жінок із дітьми, допомагають народній армії чим можуть. Моя дружина щомісяця витрачає чверть сімейного доходу на донати для різних підрозділів. Нещодавно в нашій роті згоріла, не через обстріл, а від старості машина. Я написав пост на Фейсбуку, і за 3 години для нас назбирали на іншу. Це постійна практика. Поліція також перестала сприйматися як щось окреме чи відчужене. Зрештою, я особисто часом ходжу з поліцейськими на спільні завдання. Коли на наших очах загинула кішка, молоді поліцейські зі шприца вигодували 5 її кошенят. Передусім, армія і загалом сили оборони народні в тому плані, що за винятком плутократів і їхніх дітей армія стала, здається, більш-менш точним зрізом суспільства. Наприклад, у нашій роті, і наскільки я бачу, в інших підрозділах ситуація схожа, є 1 інтелігент, 2 професійних спортсмени, 1 чоловік, який у молодості був у кримінальних бандах, 2-3 бізнесменів, 1 професійний митець і кілька аматорів. Але абсолютна більшість, звісно, робітники та селяни. Звісно, це умовна категоризація. Професійний боєць ММА водночас може займатися майнінгом криптовалют і торгівлею цінними паперами. True story. Колишній кишеньковий злодій заради адреналіну та в юності авантюрист-автостопник може водночас бути піаністом за першою освітою та інженером буріння за другою. True story. Селянин може їздити на заробітки за кордон, а зароблені гроші інвестувати в спекулятивне будівництво вдома. Теж true story. І всі вони зараз воюють проти російського вторгнення. З огляду на регіональний склад, де формується підрозділ, теж є відмінності. У мене, де переважають люди з західного регіону України, у підрозділі домінують, схоже, фахівці з різних сфер будівництва та ремонту. А в підрозділі мого знайомого, що формувався на Степовому півдні, переважають комбайнери і оператори олійних пресів. Сам цей знайомий MBA, Master of Business Administration, за поглядами схильний до ідей Айн Ренд, був стипендіатом програми Фулбрайт і навчався в Каліфорнії. І він жартома казав мені, ці люди як діти, ось ці комбайнери, оператори пресів, так, особливо оператори пресів, сідають біля вогнища, ой, розкажи нам щось про Сан-Франциско, розкажи нам ще одну казочку. І що, ти справді був у гей-кварталі? І що там, настоящі гоміки? Інтелектуали, бізнесмени, хіпстери, митці, успішні люди, журналісти в армії від початку війни викликають найбільший інтерес серед інтелектуалів, хіпстерів, митців, успішних людей і журналістів. У неординарних військових беруть інтерв'ю, вони самі пишуть есе, знімають відеозвернення, рефлектують, описують досвід, репрезентують дійсність війни. Але всі вони, ми, становимо лише крихітну меншість солдатів. Абсолютна більшість військових залишаються непредставленими, публічно німими, позбавленими власних голосів. Учора ми стояли на блокпосту. Поряд розпочався сезонний сільський ярмарок. Мої напарники дуже зраділи, бо ж весна, а їм якраз потрібні саджанці. Самі солдати цього року посадити їх не зможуть, але бодай передадуть молоді деревця сім'ям. Війна чи не війна, а треба, як заповідав Вольтер, плекати наш сад. І стоячи на дорозі на посту, я спостерігав за напарниками і любив їх. Без будь-яких «але». Любив. 2 немолодих чоловіка з автоматами за спинами, з напівусмішками на обличчі, трохи збуджені, трохи розімлілі під першим теплим промінням березневого сонця. Старший накульгує. Це у нього через давню виробничу травму одна нога коротша за іншу. Солдати довго блукали між людьми базаром і прискіпливо оглядали саджанці. Вони обрали персик і черешню. Беданк.
Yeah, so in the passage you express maybe also your unease with the attention that the intellectuals get, but you're also the one who was enthusiastically defending the power of books and how they can change lives. So how has that influenced your decision to not only first join the army, but then after a while also start writing about it and tell us all about it?
Actually, the first thing I started to, well, not the first thing, but very fast I started reading books, and a lot of them. And this is why books matter. The first book that not only me, but many Ukrainians read, because I think I was influenced by what I was reading on the social media, was Viktor Frankl's book, an Austrian psychiatrist, about his surviving Auschwitz. And this is a very hard book, which describes what is happening, but paradoxically, many Ukrainians, starting with this book, because I think it reminded us that even Auschwitz was a thing that was survived by many people, and even after Auschwitz, people decided to tell about it. Maybe you remember there was this maxim that poetry is not possible after Auschwitz, but then Primo Levi started writing poetry. Okay, Frankl started writing prose, but even I think that even the worst experience has to be processed, including processed into words, not necessarily only words, so as to be integrated. Because if you push it out, that's when you become this traumatized person forever. You have to think about, you have to talk about. And we have been joking a lot in the army that, oh, we are not the same generation as before. I will be that grandpa that always can't stop about the army. I will not hide anything. But then we realized that our stereotypes about soldiers that don't talk comes from movies and books, and sometimes also from the experiences of the previous generations, where people really felt guilty. Like, for example, for my generation, most of the stereotypes comes about soldiers who invaded Vietnam. But the difference was that they did invade Vietnam, and sometimes they witnessed or committed war crimes against the civilians. And of course, this is not very good table talk with your grandkids, right?
Talk about which literature is available to us all. We should have been reading the Vietnamese books.
Yeah, and I was mentioning that I would really like to have read the Vietnamese side of the part of the story. Now there's a great writer, Ocean Vuong, but basically he tells about how he is already the grandchild of the Vietnam War, who emigrated in the United States. That's why he's read, talking about translation. And how he is, well, the whole book is about the trauma still, for the second or third generation.
So do you feel like an obligation to work on this body of books that the next generation will read?
I believe the faster we start processing something, the faster we make, we heal to some extent. Of course, only books doesn't help, but it does help societally. Yeah, it's not, you still are traumatized. And I believe that the faster we start doing it, the better. It's much better than writing in a generation or so. Because there's this stereotype that a book about the war has to be written 10 years after. But that's very convenient for the invaders, because that's when nobody cares anymore about what they are doing at the moment.
Yeah, so fast history, fast fiction, or
sometimes it has to be a fast non-fiction, then a little bit slower fiction, then rewriting again because you didn't get it right the first time. And I believe that it has to be done on a massive scale, because obviously only one book will capture the moment, or two or three, but it has to be done. And I feel the urgency to write now. I'm still in the army, and I'm doing everything that I can to still write. The first book was written...
how do you do that?
The most difficult thing was actually get started, meaning getting out of depression. So, because we have passed through all these stages. Now I am at the acceptance. First you deny, because this cannot be happening in the 21st century in a country of IKEA, McDonald's, and stuff like that, and Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? And the second is this bargaining, which I mentioned already. Oh, this can't be going on for more than 2 or 3 months, and they can only kill so many people within that short period of time. This will end. Then this doesn't end, then you get through the depression, and very gradually you come into acceptance. And so talking about writing, the most difficult thing was actually starting to write. Because I started, I think I started within the first month, but I could not find the words, as I was mentioning. And I started, I started to read the books that I knew, like Remarque, Hemingway, and I was very irritated. Hemingway is basically about an adventurer coming to somebody else's war, and then he's, I get a separate piece. And to me, this is like a deserting, because the Italians who he fought with could not do that. This is how I now feel. That's a great book psychologically, but this is how I feel now. Same Remarque was kind of oh, but he's in France. Did you notice that this Western Front is France, and he doesn't even reflect on the thing why there is friendly French population. It's as if a Russian would be writing about the French friendly Ukrainian population. So this doesn't work for me. I'm not saying these are bad books. They don't work for me. Then you start trying to find other words. And the book that I value now is Joseph Heller's Catch-22, because basically the stance is like that. Hitler has to be defeated, but why me? And this is something that's happening in Ukraine, and I think you all know about that. That some people say that in the original, the book is titled very sarcastically, Not Born for War, because some people say, oh, I'm not born for war. Well, as if I am, nobody is born for war. And there's this split, and in Keller's Catch-22, there's a lot of dark humor, and this is something that helps Ukrainians survive. Do you know that today, while we all are celebrating the Day of Europe, before that it was the Day of Remembrance, the Russian army, Russia is celebrating the day of victory in the Great Patriotic War. And maybe some of you didn't know where it all comes from, that while the motto of the whole Europe was never again, the motto of Russia, who knows? Nobody knows. It was "Можем повторить," we can repeat. That was their thinking the whole time. And they were showing how they were, including painting on their cars, so it's not Putin's war, it's the thinking of the Russians. Actually today I almost got into a physical fight. I did get into a verbal fight with some guy who he was doing some live stream and with messages like that here on the central square of Amsterdam. So you know where it comes from. This imperialist thinking, this thinking of we can repeat it, можем повторить, has been going on for generations. And coming back to Heller's Catch-22, I thought that this dark humor was very good because the main message from Yossarian, the protagonist, is yes, our country must win, yes, we will win, but why me? And this is something that's really relevant to the Ukrainian situation, I found. Then I started reading fantasy because I thought, no, realistic books doesn't work like that. Then I started reading science fiction, and only after a year and a half, because I was already looking for words for a year and a half, or maybe almost 2 years, and then I very fast wrote basically a non-fiction book, and it felt yeah, this has to be written. And then I will get back to finding the words for the fiction, And I feel that this is something that other Ukrainian writers have been doing as well.
Yeah.
And so that you understand, I'm not I was just lucky to get translated or maybe to hit a chord with the Western audiences. Most of Ukrainian male writers are now also in the army. And I think that most of them are in a position similar to mine, where we went to the front line and then with our privilege, we were able to get transferred to more intellectual type of work for the army, different types. But some were killed. There were Ukrainian writers, prose writers, like Maxim Krivtsov, for example. Mm-hmm. He was a very promising poet. He was killed. Yeah. There were others. Vakulenko, who was a Ukrainian children's writer, he got under occupation. He was tortured and killed. And this is another thing why I think we should continue resisting, because you realize that if you don't, I write about it in the book, if you don't resist, you can still get killed, but in a more horrible conditions, as Vakulenko was, with his hands tied back and buried, maybe alive, we don't know. So this is terrible, and
yeah.
So yeah, it's better to resist, and my friend died from a shell, and I think, well, this is, maybe you won't get it, but this feels like a better way to die than being tortured first. You die anyway. And then again, you're giving a chance for many people to survive. Because there's sometimes, oh, why don't you negotiate, or why don't you give up part of your territory? But our grandpas live on that territory. You cannot evacuate millions of people, and not everybody wants to go, and then they end up getting tortured. We didn't imagine that this is possible in Europe of the 21st century until we witnessed it. Yeah, so, yeah, then you give your, like, for me, the hardest thing was not fear, but mostly being separated from my family. And I feel that because hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians volunteered, now my wife and family were able to return from being refugees in Leipzig for 2 years. They were able to return. It's risky, but many people, many refugees have been able to return.
No,
and so it's much better than just give up the part of your territory. It's not about territory. It's about, you know, remaining who you are.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Artem.
Sorry if I got too emotional, but I think you understand.
No, thank you so much. I'm really thankful that you did find the words to share with us. I have space for 2 questions from the audience for Artem, and then we will go to the last panel. So is there someone who wants
Now you can be more courageous than when talking about the books that influenced you.
Yes. Viola will come to you with the microphone.
Good evening. Thank you, Artem. A few lines that you read out, I actually underlined in the book. I'm curious, now a bit from a distance, because I understand you wrote the book a couple of years ago as the main part. What do you feel also lucky for? Not just for your life, but maybe for Ukrainian or European societies. How would you reflect?
We have been discussing one thing with Carolina from Estonia, for example. When Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were occupied by the Soviet Union, nobody really helped them. And in this case, yeah, Ukrainians sometimes feel it's not enough, but the support and the solidarity has been unprecedented in history, I would say. I can't remember any single case like that in the history of the world, the extent to which we were helped by so many people from so many different countries. And for this, we are immensely grateful. And this is what we have been lucky with, so thank you all.
Thank you.
As a Romanian, I was a little bit offended by what you said about the Romanian border, but very fast I was very worried if it is true, Europe has a problem, because it is the external border of Romania. Being a writer and defending your country in the same time, when do you find time actually for both of them? And I have a second question, I apologize. Given the situation, yeah, would you really pull the trigger as a writer, as a pacifist?
The first thing about Romania, we feel that we are very close to Romanians, and that's why we have this stereotype, because every time we saw even memes or movies about people driving in horses and doing crazy stuff in Romania, we feel like this should have been filmed in Ukraine. So this is no offense. This is feeling very close and understanding. We feel the same about Ukrainian border guards. Lately, it's not true, since the war started, by the way. And the question, if you are interested about technical process of finding the time, as I was saying, the most difficult part was getting out of depression and getting concentrated, and then you can find the time almost everywhere. As I was telling, technically, I was with the military police. So what I was doing is when I'm on the You always go in rotations, so some months you're on the front line, some months you're not. When you're not, you're basically guarding, I was guarding an airport, a military airport, because at the time we were not afraid of drones, we were afraid of diversions, I don't know if it's the correct, diversions. And usually it's like quite simple stuff. You're basically a guard, but with arms. And it's like 4-by-4 hour shifts, for example, and if you are concentrated enough, you just switch. I used to have a lot of, well, a few photographs, like showing off how I have a laptop, it's like on some, I don't know, like makeshift table, and then I have a Kalashnikov nearby. So it's, the time is not the issue, and especially like with a book like this, which is 20,000 words, so it was written rather fast. Now I'm in an even more privileged position. Now I'm basically an office worker. So again, not to try to sound like I am some sort of, a Superman. Most Ukrainians are not Superman, and we are sometimes even offended by this, like Ukrainian resilience, because sometimes it implies that, oh, hang on, and you will do everything by yourselves, So we are no more resilient than other people. I think we just don't have other choice if we don't want to stop existing. It's like somebody read Jack London, who shows about the resilience of a person who is just getting out of the Arctic wilderness because he wants to survive. So this is our resilience. And the other one, if I would have pulled the trigger physically, shooting, yes. No problem with it at all. Luckily for me, though, I didn't have that thing. As a military police, I was telling about what I was doing on the rear. As a military police, on the front line, we were taking Russian prisoners of war from the front, and so your job is quite the contrary. Your job is like not to get them wounded by anyone. The first day we arrived, our lieutenant colonel, who was like the chiefest guy, said, if you're so brave that you want to hit a Russian prisoner, I will just like let you go to Avdiivka. I was in Pokrovsk, and it was kind of, 10 or 15 kilometers in the rear, but we could all the way to Avdiivka. And he's like, which is now a non-existent city, because of the Russians. And yeah, if you catch your own, you can do whatever you want there. So it was, of course, like cynical. Well, it was like sarcasm, because nobody would do that, like go by himself to Avdiivka. And my job was the contrary. And my job was to make sure that none of our people doesn't behave like the Russians do, So even for peasants, which I mentioned, like most of the guys in my unit were just peasants, and they had arguments like that. So I wouldn't hit a chained dog, for example, or stuff like that. Like, or one of the things that we are not like them. So because for us, it's also like Russians. Putin, before the war started, he disseminated like 1 million copies among the Russian soldiers and the Russian population his article that Ukraine doesn't exist, it's a part of Russia. To us, in these 30 years since the Soviet Union collapsed, Russians seem more, I would say it's more difficult for us to understand them than, for example, to understand a Chinese person or somebody from Africa. Just being honest. Like, we can't imagine living under authoritarianism and being afraid to speak up for, well, at least since Putin is in power. This has been going on for 20-something years now. Whereas in Ukraine, as you know, as soon as we elect a leader, we start hating him, and in 5 years it's another leader, and we start hating him. It's quite a different process.
Yes.
Quite a different cycle.
You. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for
Would
us
you
it was...
maybe...
For us
Sorry,
it was, yeah,
yes, we do.
So I was lucky not to have to do this, but I think, yeah, I would have done this, but I think I would have been traumatized again. But I don't feel that I would hesitate if that was like a combat situation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for being so honored, and to share your thoughts.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Artem Sapir. Thank you so much. Yes, great. Yes. Yes, and I want to finish this evening with the last panel because I'm very happy that Artem talked about the solidarity we have with Ukraine, and I very much hope that solidarity will stay as alive as it has been for the last years. But it is undeniable that throughout Europe, the war has influenced different European states as well, and also different writing. So that's where I want to discuss with my final panel, and we've seen them before, so I want to welcome back to the stage Carolina and Dimitri. Yeah, and Carolina, I want to ask you to start with reading the first 2 paragraphs of your essay that you wrote for Common Ground.
Yes, more complete than ruins. There is war in Europe. This is something not to be forgotten, even when the war isn't happening in our city, country, or close vicinity. A full-scale war is raging in Ukraine right now, brutal and relentless. Yet life needs living, it cannot be paused, and people get used to everything. Slowly but surely we grow tired of the news, the endless attacks and cries, and yet it feels at times like living in Ilya Kaminsky's poem. We lived happily during the war, and when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. When wars unfold, they inevitably seep into our personal lives, becoming part of our individual crisis. I look around and see societies flirting with neo-fascism, governments failing to act against genocides, Europe crippled by bureaucracy, millionaires exploiting children and women, women's rights being rolled back. How can I not feel trapped and powerless watching global agreements melt away and promises once given crumble into mere syllables? How to persevere, how to stay sane.
Thank you. Yeah. When wars unfold, they inevitably seep into our personal lives, becoming part of our individual crisis. Dimitri, can you tell us about the ways in which that sentence resonates with you?
I think I can give you a pretty good example. Artyom mentioned that his wife and his children escaped to Leipzig. And this is the city where I happen to live since 30 years, I think, since we left Kiev. And in this city lives my mother, who's from Ukraine, born in Russia, grew up in Moldavia, who might meet them at some point, or other people seeking refuge from Ukraine, and tell them that it's their fault because she believes the Russian propaganda. And that's a really difficult thing to feel. And this is a shame that I, of my personal life, was facing in this novel.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of other things I can go on, but if you were meaning to build the bridge to the part I'm reading, then I thought this is one thing to make it accessible.
Yeah.
There are many more emotions, obviously. And maybe another note in this book, while writing about the war in Ukraine and how it affected my family too, there's also this sense of the flirt with neo-fascism, as you said it. In Eastern Germany, this is not a flirt. This is kind of they are making out blatantly. and I remember there was this poster by AfD, by the neo-fascists, who now in all Germany claim the highest percentage. And it basically said Russia is not attacking anyone. Russia is defending itself. So it's just exactly what you would hear in Russian state media. So the things I'm facing there and the danger I'm trying to describe, also from my personal perspective, is like being actually attacked by authoritarian violence from all sides, from the German side, from the Russian side, And then, like, this is the thing that really starts messing you from your most inner circle, from your family, where parts of this violence is met with, let's say, understanding.
Yeah. So I think I want to immediately go to the fragment that you will be reading.
I figured.
Yeah, exactly. Because you are describing this tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please take the stage.
Maybe just one more remark. We had this working thesis that history is faster than fiction, but on the other hand, it's also not fast enough for us to try to rewrite it or even poison it and destroy it. And this is also kind of what it feels like when, you know, your mother from basically your motherland is agreeing to basically its destruction or blaming it for it. It also feels like your past erodes. So then again, history is not so fast, maybe. This part I'm about to read is basically Dima trying to get to Naunhof and stuck somewhere in Saxony because all the trains are not working in Germany. No reason to vote for fascists, but I'm just saying there's a problem. And so he figures he should call his mama. Seit der Krieg zwischen uns einen Graben zieht, steige ich nicht mehr so gern ein. Bei einer der neuerlichen Fahrten erklärte Mama rundheraus, dass das Massaker von Bucha fake sei. Dass die Ukrainer das alles inszeniert hätten mit Schauspielern, die sich in den Straßen totstellen, um gegen Russland aufzuwiegeln. Ich versuche Distanz zu halten, aber versuche heute auch irgendwie nach Naunhof zu kommen. Das gute alte Leipziger Umland, wo ein Freund Geburtstag feiert. Die Anzeigetafel am Hauptbahnhof zeigt allerdings, dass alle Züge ausfallen. Natürlich kann ich dich fahren, Synula, sagt Mama mit warmer Stimme am Telefon und holt mich eine halbe Stunde später mit dem alten Golf ab. Samt frisch ergattertem Vorteilspack mit abartig süßem Mandeleis von Lidl. I wonder how the translators figured out Vorteilspack. Let me just check on that. That's not so bad. Wir müssen es sofort aufessen, Synula, sonst schmilzt es. Meine Mutter kann beeindruckenderweise gleichzeitig Eis verwerten, rauchen und Auto fahren. Die erste Portion essen wir noch halbwegs aus Appetit. Die zweite treibt unsere osteuropäische Ressourcenhörigkeit rein. Wonder how that looks like? Alright. Damit nichts schlecht wird. Stattdessen wird uns schlecht. Was wiederum gut ist, weil diese Übelkeit sicherstellt, dass keiner von uns über den Krieg spricht. Süße Stille. Also wenn man das Handy mit dem russischen Staatsfernsehen ignoriert, dass meine Mutter sich neuerdings ans Armaturenbrett klemmt, um die russische Welt wirklich überall bei sich zu haben. Eine russische Soldatenkomödie flimmert durch den Golf. Eigentlich fährt er auch nur noch, weil er sonst endgültig verfallen würde. Im Handy Russland meiner Mutter bereiten sich russische Rekruten auf ihren ersten Fallschirmsprung vor. Herr Korporal, fragt einer der verängstigten, blutjungen russischen Kadetten, was, wenn sich der Fallschirm nicht öffnet? Dann bekommst du anschließend einen neuen. Mama schaut lächelnd drüber und wiederholt glucksend, dann bekommst du anschließend einen neuen Fallschirm. Verstehst du, Diemtschik? Was soll ich sagen? Die Pointe war ja tatsächlich prima. Und Mama hat alles stehen und liegen gelassen, um mich nach Naunhof zu chauffieren unter einem Lidl-Zuckersarkophag. Also lächle ich verhalten und möglichst nicht kriegsrelativierend zurück. Wir biegen auf die A14 ab, passieren die Kiesgrube Kleinpösnar, sächsische Baggerseen, Zementmischer und stecken doch so tief in Osteuropa. Mama, fällt dir eigentlich noch auf, wie durchmilitarisiert das gesamte russische Fernsehprogramm ist? Wieso? Ist es doch gar nicht. Jeden Tag läuft mindestens ein russischer Kriegsfilm, mal als Komödie, dann wieder als Heldendrama oder Geschichtsepos. In den vermeintlich harmlosen Kulturdokus über die größten Volksschauspieler der Sowjetunion wird neuerdings ausführlich auf ihren Wehrdienst in der Roten Armee eingegangen. Noch bei den banalsten russischen Popkonzerten, die lieben meine Eltern, auf eine ganz unschuldige Weise, sitzen nun immer auch ein paar Generäle im Publikum und prosten den Tanzenden und Singenden auf den russischen Sieg zu. Alles stets gerahmt von Nachrichten, die das Publikum förmlich mit Frontberichten zwangsernähren. Zig eingeblendete und doch ausgeblendete Frontverläufe, Features zu den brandneuesten russischen Waffen, minutiöse Infografiken darüber, welche und wie viele Raketen von wo auf die Ukraine abgeschossen wurden, direkte Ansprachen, eigentlich schon Nachrichtenmoderationen von Generälen. Als wäre jeder einzelne russische Zuschauer da draußen Mitglied im militärischen Generalstab. Ich habe das alles schon von meiner Mutter aufgezählt und noch so vieles mehr durchargumentiert, mich blöd bewiesen, seit 10 Jahren, seit Russland die Krim geklaut und den Krieg im Donbass entfacht hat, kein Durchkommen. Ist das ein Vollmond? Höre ich mich also stattdessen fragen. Nein, ich glaube, dass ein Stückchen fehlt, Synula. Man könnte diese nicht ganz vollmondige Nacht als sternenklar bezeichnen, wenn denn klar wäre, wie wir beiden jeweils zu den Sternen stehen. Ich kann entweder fühlen, dass sie meine liebende Mutter ist, oder daran denken, dass sie die russischen Mörder unterstützt. Beides gleichzeitig fühlen und denken kann ich nicht. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we really saw in this excerpt both the gravity of the situation and the tension that you are experiencing, but also the way you were writing about it, which is quite funny. And I wanted to ask you, like, how you use that as a tool as well to transform the meaning, the way in which you are writing and employing humor.
I don't know. I actually don't consider it to be a separate tool. Mm-hmm. You know, I just believe that the bizarre, the grotesque, the sad and tragic and funny is part of the truth, really. And like this whole interaction between mother and son and how they stick up 3 pair of ice cream down their throats while not agreeing on anything, while this woman being actually so tender and a loving mother and at the same time actually nurturing the type of violence that threatens her son. This is bizarre, this is grotesque, and it is true. And like a side effect of it that you have to laugh about it also because, you know, it hurts.
Yeah. Carolina, since the war started, do you feel like your writing has been influenced by this?
Definitely, because my life has been influenced by this. When the war started the full-scale war started on 24th February 2022, then even this date is actually coincidentally Independence Day for Estonia, also my birthday. So it was, but it was like a
meaningful day.
Yeah, in many ways. But also, I think when Russia started the full-scale invasion, then I think it's kind of a part of maybe like a collective trauma, but everyone kind of had a certain like a flashback to 1940s, because we haven't really. I mean, Estonia was occupied by Soviet Union, and we got to start working with the history in the 1990s, but it actually took much longer. So we were kind of processing it now, writing also books about the occupation, about the wars in the 20th century, and it felt like this is happening all over again. And then first it was, of course, a great shock, and then people tried to find ways how to help, how to cope with it.
So how does this feature in your work?
Well, I've been writing about it as well. So there's the feeling that first of all, I think there's a shared feeling that okay, so we might be next. We have a border with Russia. Our countries are very tiny, and I mean, to bomb the countries, to bomb the biggest cities, you wouldn't even need to cross the border. It's the city where I live in. It's the second biggest city. It's 60 kilometers from Russian border. Kind of it feels logical, or for me intuitively as well, to kind of write about how to deal with this fear and also instability, because it's just like Jim was saying before, like you start making plans. So how do we? I also had that. I will read that later, the poem. But even my 9-year-old daughter was asking, so how do we escape? What's the route? The sea, There's how do we get out? And so you start making all those. So there's all those thoughts, those fears, anxieties, as in the society in general. As it happened, I did write a short novel. That's the Cut Line, and there the protagonist is going through. She's finished an abusive relationship and goes to the countryside to recover, but also the house that she stays at is next to a military training field, which is being expanded because of the war that has started. And the expansion, and it's ever expanding, so it swallows up whole villages because they need more space. And so she's going through all those emotions, but also feeling physically the effects of war, even though it's not a real war, it's a practice of war, but the physical the feelings are real. And so maybe this is also a little bit the parallel of what we're feeling as a society, that there's war happening very close by, and we're preparing for it also, the attack from Russia. But so it feels real and not real on the same time, and yet it's in your body as well. And so the protagonist here, she also comes to conclusion that it also deals a lot with women's roles and expectations in the society. So she also feels that women's body is also a battleground.
Yeah. So I want to ask you the same question as I asked Dimitri. Like, for him, humor or style is completely tied into the content, if I understood him correctly. Thank you. But you have been working on some sonnets that you will also be reading out loud, and I read that you really want to use also the form and the content to, you were talking about how women's bodies were also a battleground. But how do you think about the relationship between that very clearly thought out structure and the content?
Yes, so I had in the latest poetry collection that appeared last year, I had there were some sonnets in that book as well, but they're not really traditional sonnets. So there was also a debate actually if they are sonnets or not in the criticism. But so they kind of took this very strict form. And the only form that I have left in those sonnets is the 14 lines. And the lines are really long, so it doesn't accord to like the traditional sonnet, which is kind of a very close-knit, very rigid form as well, and kind of well-rhymed, but also very patriarchal in a way, since it's the women are always kind of subjects of the sonnet. But I think I was inspired a little bit by Diane Sears and also the Black sonnets, and so I wanted kind of to take the topics of war, but also sexual violence, and to kind of put some rage in it, and so it's kind of a I can't say it's quite like criticism, but somehow an upraising against the form and also the oppressive mechanisms in society.
Great, thank you. I'm very curious to hear it, and I will ask you to finish this evening by reading the sonnet, but I will first thank you here on stage and everyone who was here. I also want to thank the audience. I want to thank all the viola, so please join me when we're closing the evening. And I will notify you that all the books that we've been discussing are available for sale. So please buy them. They're very good, and they've all been translated as well. So that was also, I think, a takeaway from the evening tonight. Viola.
Yes, and so thank you all for coming. Thank you for the European Culture Foundation for collaborating. Thank you for our colleagues from EUNIC, from the Ukrainian Embassy and Culture Center, the Polish Culture Center. Thank you from the Estonian Embassy, the Romanian Center, the
Ukrainian Embassy and Institute. Yes.
I'm forgetting some.
I think we have them all. And we are very grateful that we have so many wonderful authors in Europe and that we got to enjoy them. And I want to ask you to close the evening with us by reading the poem.
Yeah.
Sonett 11. Venemaal ei tohi öelda sõda, Iisraelis ei tohi öelda genotsiid, mina ei tohi kahelda sinus ja kui ma seda teen, saab minustki vaenlane. Alati ei pea selleks isegi midagi tegema, et olla süüdi. Piisab, et oled sündinud vales kohas, et räägid valet keelt, et oled teine, oled vaene, oled võõras, oled naine, võidelda väsimuseni, võidelda elu eest, kas ka minust saab varsti pagulane, mõtlen, kui laps otsib Google Mapsis põgenemismarsruuti, plaan A, plaan B, mitte et neist abi oleks, aga ka 9-aastane on kuulnud Butšast, ka tema teab, mis on hirm, meiesugustele armu ei anta ja ometi on suvi, on soe, on mõned sõbrad, kes ei räägi midagi erilist
ja pärnad õitsevad ka tänavu liiga vara. Aeg veab meid ninapidi, ei paranda midagi, ei jäta rahule, ei palu vabandust, minu elu Maksiim, ise tuleb kõigega toime tulla, seda ma tean, seda on mulle pähe taotud lapsest saati, seda kordasid ja kinnitasid sina, usaldus on nõrkadele, haara ohjad ja varise oma koorma all põrmu, mis põrmu, ainult põlved veriseks. Nüüd ma mõistan, sinu privileeg on vägivald, lihtsalt tavaline karistamatu mees, kes räägib seltskonnas ikka vahel ilust, räägib armastusest. Thank you everyone for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the authors, and I just forgot they will also be signing their books. So I'll see you there. Thank you.
I should have totally also thank you guys. I should have totally also thank you guys.